Dear representatives of the media, welcome at today's joint press conference of the Minister of European Affairs, Mr. Orhan Murtezani, and the head of delegation of the European Union to North Macedonia, Ambassador Michalis Rokas. Distinguished representatives of the media, good day and welcome at the joint press conference of the Minister of European Affairs and the head of the delegation of the European Union, Ambassador Michalis Rokas. This is a press conference where they will discuss the report of the European Commission on North Macedonia for 2024, as well as the enlargement package. Without any further ado, I would like to invite the head of the delegation of the European Union in North Macedonia, Mr. Michalis Rokas. In the very beginning, we will hear something from the Ambassador of the European Union, Ambassador Michalis Rokas. This is a press conference that will focus on the progress report of issued by the European Commission and the enlargement package.
Thank you very much. It is with great pleasure that I stand in front of you because this is the first country report that I have the pleasure to present here in Skopje. So, as you are already aware, the 2024 annual enlargement package, which includes, as usual, the country report on North Macedonia, comes 1 week after the European Commission approved the North Macedonia's reform agenda, and also 1 week after the visit of the Commission President von der Leyen to the region and Skopje. The main findings are presented at the beginning of the report, together around 120 recommendations that North Macedonia is invited to implement in the coming year. Moreover, the reform agenda adopted by the government and approved by the Commission last week includes also a list of concrete reforms that the government itself has agreed to undertake, which, if implemented, will allow for the disbursement of significant financial support. So now let me highlight some of the key conclusions and recommendations of this report. North Macedonia maintained a high level of ambition to move towards in the accession negotiations. In order to advance the accession negotiations process, North Macedonia needs to adopt the constitutional changes with a view to including in the constitution citizens who live within the borders of the state and who are part of other people, such as Bulgarians, which it committed to launch and achieve. In parallel, North Macedonia needs to continue to deliver on the implementation of EU-related reforms, in particular under the fundamentals cluster. Notably, the judiciary, the fight against corruption and organized crime. Trust in the justice system needs to be strengthened. Corruption should be addressed unabatedly, including through a solid track record in the investigation, prosecution, and final conviction of high-level cases. The Commission is looking forward to swift and decisive follow-up to the screening reports of the fundamentals cluster, including as regards the country's roadmaps in line with the negotiating framework with a view to opening the first cluster as soon as possible and when relevant conditions are met. In particular, as concerns our assessment this year, there is some progress that has been made in the area of fight against organized crime by the country, and limited progress in the judiciary, which is still an improvement, a slight improvement compared to last year when no progress was registered. And I spoke about the fight against corruption, where unfortunately there is no progress. But there are some positive elements, and those are noted in the fields of agriculture, rural development, fisheries, transport policy, and regional policy. With regard to the internal market, the overall assessment remains mixed. Some progress, some less progress, but areas such as the free movement of workers and goods, competition policy, company law, and intellectual property needs to be addressed. So, last but not least, a very positive part of the report is that the country remains fully aligned to the EU common foreign and security policy. Благодарам.
Благодарам, амбасадор.
Thank you, Ambassador. Now, I would like to invite the Minister on European Affairs, Orhan Murtezani. Minister, you may take the floor. Thank you. Distinguished representatives of the media, in the very beginning, let me express my appreciation to the EU Ambassador Michalis Rokas and his team for their commitment and support in the implementation of the European integration processes of North Macedonia. The European Commission 2024 enlargement package, consisting of the enlargement strategy and the individual reports for each candidate country, was published on 30th of October 2024. The report covers the period from June 15, 2023 to September the 1st, 2024. And as always, it represents an objective cross-section of the state and progress of the reforms, and it provides detailed overview of the overall readiness and progress compared to the previous year. What I would like to underline in the very beginning is that this report should be analyzed in the context of other reports that we received this year, that is the screening reports for each of the clusters, as well as with the recently adopted Reform Agenda 2024-2027, the roadmaps for rule of law and public administration reform, as well as other relevant documents. It is equally important to point out that the priorities are harmonized with the reform agenda, that is, that all documents are interconnected with the aim of better results and synergy precisely in the priority areas. All these documents represent an excellent basis for defining the reform priorities of the country in the forthcoming period, and are the foundation for the work of the government, of the assembly, the administration, but also of all other social stakeholders, with the purpose of intensifying the dynamics of the integration process. The Ministry of European Affairs, as for every previous report, conducted an initial analysis of the European Commission's evaluations in the report. The most simplified qualification when reading this report is that there has been progress, that is, that there is slight upward trend. The country's overall preparedness score for 2024 is a good level of preparedness, that is 3.22 compared to 3.13 in 2023. This is a solid and consistent level of preparedness over the several previous years. Regarding the other candidate countries from the region, I would like to mention that our level of readiness is still the highest, which is another indicator that the Republic of North Macedonia is not only ready for the accession negotiations, but the comparative analysis indicates that we have achieved cumulative progress. By clusters, there is also an improvement in the readiness for Cluster 1 compared to last year, which is positive considering that this is the first cluster to be opened. There is also satisfactory level of readiness in Clusters 3, 4, and 6, while more efforts are needed for further alignment in Clusters 2 and 5. In terms of the achieved progress, there is slight improvement compared to last year, 2.82 compared to 2.76 in 2023. Of course, it should be taken into account that the average grade is based on the grades of 43 areas, because this includes the work of the assembly, the elections, governance, civil society, but also the specific areas of chapters 23 and 24, which are evaluated separately. This shows that despite all challenges we are facing, especially considering that in the period covered by the report, there were 3 governments, we can still say that we have a stable continuity in the overall readiness of the country, which is a good confirmation that we remain on the strategic EU membership determination, and it should be a more of an incentive for all of us to deliver the necessary reforms. Regarding the findings and recommendations from the report, I would like to refer to several elements. In the field of functional democratic institutions, the implementation of the presidential and parliamentary elections this year in a satisfactory atmosphere is noted, but the need to address recommendations of the OSCE, ODIHR, and the Venice Commission is also indicated. Regarding the work of the Assembly, it is stated that the new rules of procedure were adopted as part of the Jean Monnet process, but the need for inter-party cooperation is pointed out with the purpose of speeding up the implementation of EU-related reforms. When it comes to public administration reform, the EC states that with the adoption of the amendments to the law on the organization and work of state administrative bodies, clearer lines of responsibility were provided, as well as an obligation to carry out an impact assessment when creating new state bodies and reducing the number of primary budget beneficiaries. We still have the obligations to complete the reorganization process and pass the package of laws for the administration. When it comes to justice, the implementation of the new strategy for reforms in the justice system and the recommendations of the assessment mission for the Judicial Council and the strengthening of human resources in this sector. In the area of the fight against corruption, the conclusion is that this is the main priority of the government, and although the institutional framework is established and effective in terms of prevention, efforts are needed to further strengthen the capacities of the law enforcement institutions, the adoption of a new criminal code in accordance with EU standards, and the improved implementation of the strategy for prevention of corruption. When it comes to the fight against organized crime, progress has been achieved in the field of confiscation with further harmonization of the legislation with the acquis, but in this case, better efficiency is needed in the prosecution and judgments of cases of organized crime and strengthening of the capacities of the competent authorities and institutions. The country continues to fulfill its human rights obligations. The legal framework is partially aligned with the EU law and standards, but the legislation needs to be implemented in a systematic way. Particular focus should be placed on improving the conditions in prisons, strengthening the capacities of the Ombudsman and the Commission for Prevention and Protection from Discrimination. Furthermore, protection of vulnerable categories is needed. In the area of media freedom, the priority should be directed towards further harmonization of the legal framework, the appointment of the members of the Audiovisual Media Council and the Program Council of the National TV. In terms of the economic criteria, we continuously maintain a good level and good state of preparedness and progress as a prerequisite for a functional market economy. The key point is how to integrate these guides in our policies in economies. This is a challenge that we accept with responsibility and determination. We are aware that the success of the European file depends on joint efforts from the government through the Assembly to the civil sector. Through cooperation and open dialogue as the basis of our efforts to advance our European future. Only in this way can we dream of the membership in the European Union, and can this dream become a reality. He will just repeat the same speech in Albanian.
Tetor. Raporti mbulon periudhën nga 15 qershori i vitit 2023 deri në 1 shtator të vitit 2024 dhe si gjithmonë paraqet pasqyrë objektive të gjendjes dhe progresit të reformave, duke dhënë pasqyrë të detajuar të përgatitjes dhe progresit të përgjithshëm në krahasim me vitin e kaluar. Atë që duhet ta theksoj në fillim është se ky raport duhet të analizohet në kontekst të raporteve të tjera që kemi marrë këtë vit, pra screening raportet nga klasterët, Agjenda reformuese 2024-2027, udhërrëfyesin për sundimin e ligjit dhe reformave në administratën publike, si dhe dokumentacionin tjetër relevant. Të gjitha këto dokumente paraqesin bazë të shkëlqyeshme për definimin e prioriteteve reformuese të shtetit në periudhën e ardhshme dhe janë bazë për punën e qeverisë, kuvendit, administratës, por edhe për të gjithë faktorët tjerë shoqëror në mënyrë që të intensifikohet dinamika e procesit të integrimit. Ministria për çështje
The Ministry of European Affairs, as for every previous report, made an initial analysis of the European Commission's evaluations in the report this year. The most simplified qualification when reading the report is that there has been progress both in the past year and in overall readiness, that is, that there is a slight upward trend. The country's overall preparedness score for 2024 is a good level of preparedness, 3.22 compared to 3.13 in 2023, and it is a solid and consistent preparedness over several previous years. When it comes to other countries from the region, I would like to mention that our level of readiness is the highest, which is another indicator that North Macedonia is not only ready for the accession negotiations, but the comparative analysis indicates that we have cumulative progress. By clusters, there is also an improvement in the readiness for Cluster 1 compared to last year, which is positive considering that this is the first cluster to be opened. There is also a satisfactory level of readiness in clusters 3, 4, and 6, while more efforts are needed for further alignment in clusters 2 and 5. In terms of the achieved progress, a slight improvement trend can be observed compared to last year, 2.82 compared to 2.76 in 2023. Of course, it should be taken into account that the average grade is based on the grades for 43 areas, because this includes the work of the assembly, elections, governance, civil society, but also the specific areas of chapters 23 and 24. This shows that despite all challenges we are facing, especially considering that in the period covered by the report, there were 3 governments, we can still conclude that we have a stable continuity in the overall readiness of the country, which is a confirmation that we remain on the strategic EU membership determination and should be more of an incentive for all of us to deliver the necessary reforms. With regards to the findings and recommendations from the report, I would like to reflect on several segments. In the field of functional democratic institutions, the implementation of the presidential and parliamentary election this year in a satisfactory atmosphere is noted, but the need to address the recommendations of the OSCE, ODIHR, and the Venice Commission is also indicated. Regarding the work of the Assembly, it is stated that the new rules of procedure were adopted as part of the Jean Monnet process, but the need for inter-party cooperation is pointed out in order to speed up the implementation of reforms related to the EU. When it comes to the public reform administration, the EC states that with the adoption of the amendments to the law on the organization and work of state administration bodies, clearer lines of responsibility were provided, as well as an obligation to carry out an impact assessment when creating new state bodies and reduction of the number of primary budget beneficiaries. We still have the obligation to complete the reorganization process and pass the package of laws for the administration. In the area of justice, the implementation of the new strategy for reforms in the justice sector and the recommendations of the assessment mission for the Judicial Council and the strengthening of human resources in this sector is needed. In the area for fight against corruption, the conclusion is that this is the main priority of the government, and although the institutional framework is established and effective in terms of prevention, still efforts are needed to further strengthen the capacities of the law enforcement institutions, the adoption of a new criminal code in accordance with the EU standards, and improved implementation of the strategy for prevention of corruption. In relation to the fight against organized crime, progress has been made in the field of confiscation with further harmonization of the legislation with the EU legal framework, but in this case, better efficiency is needed in the prosecution and judgments of cases of organized crimes and strengthening of the capacities of competent authorities. The country continues to fulfill its human rights obligations. The legal framework is partially aligned with the EU acquis, but the legislation needs to be implemented in a systematic way. Particular focus should be placed on improving conditions in prisons, strengthening the capacities of the Ombudsman and the Commission for Prevention and Protection from Discrimination, as well as protection of vulnerable categories. When it comes to the freedom of media, priorities should be directed towards further harmonization of the legal framework, the appointment of the members of the Audiovisual Media Council and the Program Council of the National Television. In terms of economic criteria, we continuously maintain a good level of preparedness and progress as a precondition for a functional market economy. The key point is how to integrate these guidelines into our political and economic strategies. This is a challenge that we accept with responsibility and determination. We are aware that the success of the European file depends on joint efforts from the government, assembly, and the civil sector. Through cooperation and open dialogue as the basis of our efforts to advance our European future. Only in this way can the dream of membership in the European Union become a reality. I would like to thank both speakers today, and I would like to thank the media for your attendance today. Now we will continue with the questions from the media. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Ambassador. Again, appreciation to both of you for the published information. Great appreciation for the media and your attendance. Can we hear a question? Good day, Lipa Jundeva, TV24. I have a question to both the Minister and the Euro Ambassador, Minister Murtezani. This time in the report, there is criticism for the first time to the Secretariat of European Affairs, now Ministry of European Affairs, that it lacks capacity to deal with the process and that it requires better coordination with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Assembly. How do you comment on this? And which steps are going to be undertaken, considering that you are the one who should lead this process? What the structure will be like? And to the Euro Ambassador, although the bilateral agreements, mostly with the neighbors, are almost always mentioned in the reports, this time the agreements with Greece and Bulgaria can be seen on the first page of the report, in the second paragraph. Does this mean that Brussels and the EU believe that the country does not fulfill and implement the agreements with the neighbors? Thank you for your question. The problem with the capacities of the institutions to tackle the implementation of the reforms has been part of the reports for years. But we are now finalizing the preparations. We should get ready for opening Cluster 1 and, of course, the reinforcement of the capacities of the Ministry of European Affairs, but also the other in-line ministries, is of key importance. You surely remember that my first press conference as a Minister of European Affairs was precisely on this topic. I alarmed at that point that EPA and other structures are under the minimal capacities and they cannot deal successfully with the implementation. We see the same phenomena now when we are setting up the structure and when we are intensifying the process of coordination for implementation of the reform agenda. This has been discussed on the government session on several occasions. The structure will need to be reinforced, but it will require professional staff which will directly be involved. Until we reinforce the structure with professional staff, we will need to rely on the support from the European delegation, but also the technical support from various donors in our country.
And you will have this support. Responding to you, as you see, there is a different structure of the country report in order to make it better readable, and it is shorter, and also all the 120 recommendations that are brought up front, which includes this part. So there is no any other reason. It is just everyone can focus on all the essential elements where we make recommendations, so as it is easier readable, and then everyone can go to further pages in order to see what exactly we analyze in this. But of course, it goes without saying that good neighborly relations and regional cooperations remain essential elements of the enlargement process.
Thank you. Now we'll go with another question. Tamara Grancharovska, Telma TV. I have several questions, so I will have some more time. Minister, you said that you will strengthen the structure, and 1 week ago, or maybe 10 days ago, you said that you will need 100 new jobs. Does this mean that the experts will be brought from abroad in order to fill out the places in the public administration where we have lack of professional staff which will implement the negotiation process? Where are you going to find these 100 experts for which the government has already gave its approval? I will reflect on the press conference. The Prime Minister 2 days ago said that this report has been that you cannot bear the responsibility for this whole report because this government has been in term for only 2 months. But the General Secretariat, the transformation of the ministry, now the transformation of the public administration and the division with the Ministry of Digital Transformation, the assessments show that the readiness is very low. The transparency, the reports about the progress of the government, the agendas for the sessions are not available. There are no reports, and this is all under the competence of the government for the past 4 months. The General Secretariat is also not very clear how it functions. What could you have done and has not been done in the past 4 months? What are you going to do with the Ministry of Public Administration, since both the previous and the current one does not have the capacity to implement the key reforms in the public administration? How are you going to reinforce the institutions there? The action plan is still on the waiting list regarding the rights of minorities and communities in Macedonia. The European Union still waits for this action plan. Why it has not been completed yet? And the last question for you, I hope you're writing down, or maybe I will say them one by one. It is not in the context of the report, but it is related. Elections in Bulgaria are... the results of the elections and the establishment of the political government are still ongoing. What will happen if a political government is not formed in Bulgaria? All analysis show that political government will not be established. Maybe they will have the elections for the 8th time. Are you going to wait for this? And what is the plan B if there is no political government in Bulgaria? For the Euro ambassador, I would like one concrete question to you, because we are fed up with diplomatic answers. You gave the same 2 days ago. Constitutional amendments with postponed activity. Does the European Union accepts this without amendments to the negotiation framework? And would it accept it if Bulgaria agrees to it? That is, does the European Commission or Council will refer Macedonia to discuss with Bulgaria with postponed activity, and would this be acceptable for the European Union? Is this possible without amending the framework agreement? I have not said 100 experts, but I said professional staff. This can involve experts and others. These experts from various projects are already working in the Ministry of European Affairs. This number will increase in the next few months so that we have solid structure for implementation of the reform agenda, and so that we can reinforce the capacity both of the ministry and the institutions. The experts cannot be employed, foreign experts cannot be employed within the ministry. They are engaged through various projects, while the additional employments will go through the Ministry of European Affairs and in-line ministries. We will try to find those people in the country. What we cannot find in the country will be asked from various donations and projects. When it comes to the action plan is under the authority of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. At the moment, as much as I know, it is on technical level between the MFA and the Ministry of European Affairs. We are working on harmonizing the text, and it will be reviewed on political level in the government, and it will be sent to the European Commission. When it comes to the transparency, I think that at the last session, the Secretary General Yanushev addressed all your complaints and concerns, not yours, but yours directly, but yours as journalists. And we agreed the transparency should be increased. It concerns certain technical issues, and after these technical issues are resolved, we'll continue being transparent because we have no reason to hide the work of the government. When it comes to the administration, I will be sincere. I cannot tell you how, because it is under the competence of the Minister of Public Administration, and he should know how he will reinforce the institutions. But everything that we can do as the Ministry of European Affairs and the delegation, we will provide our support and we will be at their disposal. What if there is no political government in Bulgaria? I think that this is not the time to establish hypothetical thesis, because everything that should have been said has been said. Now it is time to find solutions.
Yes, likewise for me it's impossible to speculate on hypothesis, but what it is crystal clear, and I want to refer, because in my opinion, when the President of European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, was here and she had the same podium, she delivered a very clear and unequivocal message. And I would like to quote. First of all, there was a discussion about the excellent cooperation that, and she thanked North Macedonia for that. And then I quote, "We have a very clear goal in sight. It is to open the fundamentals clusters as soon as possible. We are almost there. We know it is about the constitutional change that your country committed to implement. Now we need joint effort, cooperation and dialogue. I hope that all the political forces in the country will come together to take this decisive step forward." And then she went on that she is convinced, like the Prime Minister was sitting there, that we can overcome the obstacles, that they are still there. That's all what I want to mention.
Имате други прашања?
Are there any other questions? I think that we covered all questions and answers, but I would like to say that we always remain open, both as a government and Ministry of European Affairs, on all questions that you might have on this topic in the meantime. Thank you for attending this joint press conference, and I wish you all the best and looking forward to seeing you again. Just repeating into Albanian. Thank you again for your attendance and see you soon.
Thank you very much.